Everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, whatcassread. It would be just my luck. As soon as I hit record to film, the landscaping is here. I think they're done now. I think we're good to go. I'm here to bring you a video today. A little chat about book-to-screen adaptations. The idea for this video came about because I was watching a very, very bad movie yesterday. I mean, I don't know if it's the movie's fault. I think it's the fact that the source material wasn't that great. And it was a book-to-screen adaptation on Netflix of The Woman in the Window. It's one of those mystery thriller, I guess you could call them like an airport mystery thriller. It's one of those very, very popular, very common ones. And it got me thinking about just some book-to-screen adaptations that I have on my shelf. Some of the clear winners, some of the clear losers, and then some other possibilities, like some that are already in production and have at least one season out. I think, we should talk about them a little bit and see where it could go. And a couple other books on my shelf that I think would be really successful if it were adapted by the right people. So yeah, let's just have a little chat about some book-to-screen adaptations. For me, the fantasy genre has suffered in the past, suffered greatly, and that can be for any number of reasons, and I feel like a big part of it is how difficult it can be to put something that doesn't actually exist onto a screen and make it believable, and then pitching it to some type of production company and being able to secure the budget and be able to secure the funds to put that source material onto the screen in a believable way. We're dealing with magic, we're dealing with elements, we're dealing with these things that aren't found anywhere on the planet. How can we make it believable on screen? For me, there's one book-to-screen adaptation that I feel like is the gold standard. Anything that comes after it, it's like there's no excuse anymore because we've already seen it done well. There's literally no excuse anymore. My father-in-law might disagree with me, but my gold standard of fantasy book-to-screen adaptations is, of course, The Lord of the Rings. I'm currently holding up The Fellowship of the Ring. This is my very, very battered and beaten up copy. It's my favorite, one of my favorite books of all time. I feel like anything that comes after Peter Jackson's adaptation of the Lord of the Rings trilogy needs to take a really hard look at themselves, that if they're not going to be able to adapt faithfully, realistically, as true to the source material as you can without, sacrificing too much of what makes this book so great, you need to take a hard look at yourself and think about whether or not the adaptation is even worth it. One of the things that I feel like made this book-to-screen adaptation so successful was, quite frankly, they had the location to be able to make Middle-earth happen and make Middle-earth real. New Zealand provided the perfect backdrop to this entire story, and the fact that they were able to rely so little on green screen as far as developing Middle-earth is concerned set this just miles above the competition, and that's kind of an unfair advantage. So we'll talk about that just as like one point. We know that not everybody can film in New Zealand. The other really big power hitter that they had was Weta Workshop. Now, it's been a minute since I've done any type of deep dive into the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but trust me, when this came out, I was still in high school. I had all of the extended editions. I watched all of the behind the scenes faithfully. Weta Workshops, I feel like now is the industry go-to for armor, for weaponry, for really, really amazing theatrical pieces that aren't just props. They're not just props. They do have prop versions of all the weapons, but they actually make and forge these weapons, this armor. It's hand done. You can tell there was so much detail put into the quality craftsmanship. Fans like myself looked on screen and analyzed everything. We analyzed Aragorn's ring, Galadriel's ring. We analyzed the One Ring. But not only that, then you had the weaponry and the armor for the orcs, for the Uruk-hai. They were different. For the goblins, they were different. If we start getting into the Hobbit, which I will in a minute, trust me, we had different looks for the elves of Rivendell versus the elves of Mirkwood. So I feel like a big power hitter that they had working with them was Weta Workshops. And not everybody can do that. But once again, I feel like if you're going to make something, you have to find the craftsmen and the artisans who are willing to put in that effort for you to be able to make these kinds of things believable. Two very big power hitters. Now, of course, the acting was super great. Pete Jackson, huge fan of the book, so he was trying to make things as truthful as possible. You know, there are things that were obviously cut out from the source material that didn't make it into the movies. Some things were changed, particularly the big Hobbit scene at the end of The Return of the King. Do I think it detracted from the film? I don't think so. Now, will I forever be saddened that I never got a Tom Bombadil on screen? Yes. I'm still a little bit bitter about that. Now, let's just go right into this one. I don't even want to talk about this because Wingnut Studios and everybody on the Pete Jackson team proved to us with The Lord of the Rings that you could do it well, and then they gave us this monstrosity. So this is The Hobbit. Again, one of my favorite books of all time. They stretched it out into 3 films. Why? They gave us so much extra stuff that wasn't in the source material that made absolutely no sense. And I think the thing that us readers are always going to harp on studios and on screenwriters for doing is creating something outside of the source material that has no business being there. The truer that you can stay to the source material is always going to make us happy, is always going to give you, I feel like, the best product at the end of the day, and this suffered greatly. Of course, everything looked gorgeous as far as the characters are concerned, but you're telling me you were able to film, you were able to film Rohan in the Two Towers, and you were able to scout some amazing locations in New Zealand, and yet you resorted to green screen for what, 80% of the backdrop? I'm always going to be bitter about this. I mean, we got a cool song out of it. We got a really cool Ed Sheeran song out of it. I feel like Martin Freeman did an amazing job as Bilbo. The dwarves? Yeah, let's talk about that. The dwarves, it was an interesting choice, Thorin Oakenshield, as gruff and as bitter as he was. But I feel like they just relied too heavily on the cinematic elements to bring this story to life that didn't need to be there. You didn't need the really the filters on this are insane. Like, the lighting was insane. You didn't need to do that. Developing a romance plotline that didn't absolutely not need to be there. Okay, let's talk about a good one. So I do have this version of Game of Thrones. I do have the TV tie-in edition, and I've been hemming and hawing over getting, like, the original cover. I don't know yet, because who can be mad at Sean Bean? I can't. This is, like, one of those instances where he's, like, just shadowed enough on the cover that it doesn't look half bad, honestly. This is an example, I feel like, of a book-to-screen adaptation that started off great, because why? We had the source material, and then we got that terrible 8th season, and it's not everybody's fault, but it is the showrunner's fault, and I will give them all the blame. I remember I had just finished reading this book right before season 1 of Game of Thrones came out on Blu-ray, or on DVD Blu-ray. And so I had read this, fell in love with it, and then immediately went out and bought the first season on Blu-ray. Like, without having seen any kind of trailer, I hadn't seen any of it, but I had heard from other friends of mine, sorry about the glare, I had heard from other friends of mine who had read this book. They were like, trust us, that HBO adaptation is really good. So I put a lot of faith into them, and I remember buying it. I was like, I you know, was like, Timmy, that's my husband. I was like, Timmy, I got something for us to watch. He's like, what is it? I was like, I don't want to tell you, because I had just finished this book, so I knew all the things. He was like, okay. So I put it on, and after the first episode, he was hooked, and I was super satisfied at the end of the first episode, because this was just such a good example of them remaining as faithful to the first season and the first book as they possibly could. As the show picked up steam, as more money was kind of thrown their way, it seemed like the showrunners took a lot more liberties away from the source material, and that's how we got where we got toward the end of it. Now, I think that we got some really great things. We got the Battle of the Bastards, which who knows if we'll even get in the books. Maybe not. But I think as far as like first seasons go, this was a really great true to the book adaptation. I think I do want to do a reread of this, because I actually just rewatched. I haven't started season 8, but I just finished season 7 of Game of Thrones, and it just really inspired me to like come back and like pick up on some things that I hadn't picked up on. Some of the things that I feel like what made this really successful, I mean, the casting. You can't say that they miscast any role in this series, I feel like. All the kids were spot on. Sean Bean, of course, was spot on. Robert Baratheon was spot on. Daenerys Targaryen, Viserys, Khal Drogo, like literally every single casting was spot on. It made me feel for characters that I had no need to feel for them when I was reading them, like Brienne of Tarth. I wasn't as attached to her when I was reading her, and then we get introduced to her, and I began seeing more of what she could be about, especially with Gwendolyn Christie's version of her. What else do I feel like was really successful? Again, the details, and the fact that they're filming on location, not relying so heavily on green screen. Of course, there are green screen moments that you can kind of tell, but when you have power hitters like HBO behind you, you can afford those really great locations. And I think that's just what we now as audiences have come to expect. Which, let's go now into another terrible book-to-screen adaptation, and this is another one with dragons. Aragon by Christopher Paolini. We're the same age, so I've been following him for a long time, and I feel like he has a really good sense of humor about the whole thing, about how fans have truly hated the screen adaptation of this because they did it all wrong. Everything about the film version of this was all wrong. I think it's just because someone read the book and was like, trying to build off of the hype of like everybody was into the Lord of the Rings, and thought, you know, I can make a movie for kids too. And what their mistake was dumbing everything down. There was no explanation of the magic system, which is what like half of this book is about. The relationship between Aragon and his dragon Saphira, severely dumbed down, just like everything about it. They cheated a really great story of the opportunity to be told because it was YA, and I think that's what happened with the studios. They're like, oh, it's a kid's book, okay, we don't have to put in the budget for it. Christopher Paolini, I feel like, has a really, really good sense of humor. I think people are just like desperate for his books to get another shot at being made into a really great screen adaptation, and I'll be here for that. Absolutely nothing to do with the book. This book, Outlander, written by Diana Gabaldon. This is another one of those instances where I feel like it's kind of in the same situation as Game of Thrones, where season 1 very faithful to the source material, and as we've gotten farther and farther along into the series, the TV series has now taken its own liberties and its own paths. It's strayed from the source material a little bit, and I just feel like they kind of don't care as much. Like, I feel like this, they tried really hard to remain faithful to the source material because it told such a tragic part of Scottish history with the Battle of Culloden. And I feel like when they were dealing with something that heavy as far as the erasure of the way of the clan life in the Scottish Highlands, the loss of life, I felt like they understood the gravity of what they were trying to represent on screen. Then as we got into further seasons, you know, this is a romance. It's, you know, it's historical fiction. It's got, you know, some type of like sci-fi element with time travel, but at the heart of it, it is a romance. And so as the series progressed, I feel like they're just kind of like, at this point, just clocking in, doing their thing because you have a built-in fan base of people who have loved these books for 20 years. Yes, I am a fan of the TV series, but I really haven't watched too much past season 4. Will I continue watching it? Sure, but I'm less as hyped on it as I was. I think they're about to put out season 6 and I've not even watched season 5. I haven't really felt the need to watch season 5 because I saw some of the stuff that they did and I was like, oh, I don't like that. I don't think that's how it should have gone. Do I feel like books 4, 5, and 6 in the series are kind of filler books? Yes. So you do what you can with the source material. Book number 1 to me was the best. Another set of movies. This is the Chronicles of Narnia, my entire set. So we've had a lot of editions of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a book that holds a very special place in my heart. It is one of my top 5 books of all time. It's never going to be kicked out of the top 5 because I have such a nostalgic feeling about it. And of course, I read these books as kids, so I have expectations of specific scenes. For those of us who don't know, you know, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe follows 4 children, the Pevensies, and they are in the midst of World War II, and London was under all the bombing threats, and so they evacuated children out of the city into the countryside, and various families in the countryside would take them in. So the Pevensies are taken into a home, a big manor home, and that's where Lucy Pevensey, while they're playing a game of hide and seek, stumbles across this magical world in the wardrobe called Narnia. So there's very specific scenes in this book that, you know, you want them to get right. And I really feel like they did. So Lucy stumbling across the wardrobe and discovering Narnia. Perfection. I watched the making of this film and they actually blindfolded this young actress and like carried her onto set. So that way when they took the blindfold off and the cameras were rolling, that was her very first reaction of seeing herself inside the wintry wonderland of Narnia. And she nailed it. They nailed it. You know, the Turkish delight scene, meeting Mr. Tumnus, just like very magical things. Aslan was really great CGI. That's a very good example of CGI because they built upon, you know, a model of a lion and then worked the digital magic to enhance it. So there were lots of things that I feel like that they did right. Then we got to Prince Caspian, but this is the Pevensies' return to Narnia, and there's only so much you can do when child actors are growing up. So they aged up the characters a little bit more, and the one thing that I didn't really enjoy was Peter Pevensy's kind of like male macho rivalry with Prince Caspian for no reason. There was no need for it. And then by the time you get to the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is a really great, fun adventure. It takes place on a ship, and we are reunited with some of our favorite characters from the previous adventures in Narnia, with the younger 2 Pevensies, with Edmund and Lucy. By the time we got to the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, people had lost their interest, and I can't come up with that many friends of mine who have actually read all 7 of the Chronicles of Narnia, you know? So you didn't have that many people who were like as in love with the source material as you have with people who have a really strong attachment to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But started off great. The first book and the first film were wonderful book-to-screen adaptations, and then as the 3 movies got on with it, some of the changes that they made the book-to-screen adaptations suffer for it. Now let's get into some book-to-screen adaptations that show some promise. So I actually didn't mind watching The Witcher on Netflix. I might be in the minority here. I'm holding up The Last Wish, written by Andrzej Sapkowski. Here is why I didn't mind the screen adaptation, is because I wasn't a fan of The Last Wish. And I feel like watching these short stories play out on screen gave me a little bit more context that I had been missing in the translation, that I had been missing in the short stories. And that's just me as a reader, where I don't really enjoy short stories to begin with. In the books, I'm not even yet to the point of meeting Ciri, and so I have some reading to catch up with, because I know that they announced that Witcher Season 2 is coming out. So in my opinion, I really feel like this is a series that has potential to keep going and give readers really great, faithful adaptations. So we'll see how this goes from here. I'll have to catch up on the rest of it. Another one that I've only read this first book, and I've only seen the one season that was out on HBO, was The Golden Compass. That I felt like was really cool. We had a great production team behind it. There were some big stars behind it as well, like Lin-Manuel Miranda. This, for me, I don't have the childhood attachment to The Golden Compass the way that I do to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So for me, I haven't had these characters living in my mind for as long. So seeing Lyra on screen, to me, I'm looking at her and that's Lyra. So now that I've seen her, that's what I associate Lyra to be. So I feel like we could get a good second season out of this. Now I want to wrap up, and let's just talk about two books that I would really like to see adapted to screen. Before we get to that, I know people are gonna probably put in the comments, you know, what about The Eye of the World, Robert Jordan, The Wheel of Time? I am gonna start that. Now that I know that the series is coming out in November, I have a hard deadline to get started on that one. And then of course the Expanse series. My brother is all about the Expanse series, so I've read book number 1. I'm gonna start book number 2, and I just haven't yet watched the show yet, so I don't have an opinion on that one. A book that I think would make a really good movie, Kings of the Wild, written by Nicholas Ames. How fun would this movie be? I don't think it needs to be a whole series, because this story wraps up in one book. Of course we have Bloody Rose, but that's following a whole new set of characters. But I think this one by itself would just be so fun, because imagine you have Clay Cooper and the mercenary band going on their adventure, okay? The chapters themselves felt really episodic. There's lots of different battle scenes. But could you imagine the soundtrack? Like, you could even contact Nicholas Ames and get the soundtrack, maybe get the rights to the soundtrack that he had been writing this book to. Because I think that's on his website. Like, you can go to Nicholas Ames' website and read the book to the soundtrack that he had been envisioning while he was writing it. How fun would that be? I think this would be a really amazing movie if they were able to, like, put all the right elements together. Gosh, that would be a lot of fun. And then my final book-to-screen adaptation, I'm always going to promote this one. I believe that the Live Strip Traders would make a really amazing TV show, and I'm holding out for some type of network. It's got to be the right one. It's got to be the right one, because this holds a very big attachment for me. Just imagine dragons, pirates, and a huge cast of characters. Like, there's so many different character perspectives that we could follow. Like, it's all here. It's already ready for you. Robin Hobb did a great job with it. I just need someone to bring this to life. I just need someone to be able to see the vision of quickening of a live ship. How great would that be to see, you know, Captain Vestrit pass on the ship deck and having the Vivacia come to life. That would be amazing. I just need someone to have the vision. Unfortunately, it's not me, because I don't have the budget to put the vision to life. I don't have that, but I need someone who does. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. This was just like an examination of some of the books on my shelf. My thoughts on what I think has made successful book-to-screen adaptations. Feel free to add your commentary to the comment section below. Let me know, what are some of your favorite, what are some of your least favorite? Do you agree with any of my picks? Do you disagree? And ultimately, like, are there books on your shelves that you really want to see made into some type of screen adaptation, whether it's going to be a series or whether it would be just like one single movie? That would be really fun, so let's talk about it in the comment section below. Otherwise, you can find me on my social media if you want to follow along with me. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at whatcassread, so it's the same as this channel. I'm on Goodreads, so you can see up to date what I'm actually currently reading. And of course, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later.